stood still as the light hit her skin. 13-year-old Autumn Coleman stared at 500 white, sneering faces. The cruel prank that caused the charity scholarship lawsuit to fail. Then her voice exploded, silencing their laughter instantly. Neither she nor Margaret Coleman would ever be the same. Before I dive into this life-changing story, where are you watching from today? Hit the like button if you ever felt like an outsider, and subscribe to the channel to stay with us. Now rewind to see a moment that was meant to be humiliating become the spark that ignites a revolution. Autumn Coleman wakes up every weekday at 5:30 a.m. That morning in Austin, Texas, the sky was as gray as an old news report. A cold wind crept across the wooden roofs and through the cracks in the windows, as if to signal that something was about to happen. Autumn Coleman, a 13-year-old girl with meticulously braided hair and eyes that always seemed to be listening for something deep, stepped out of the small bedroom of her two-room apartment as her mother, Margaret Coleman, sat quietly at the worn dining table. In her mother's hand was a printout from Westlake Preparatory School, the most prestigious school in Texas, where 98% of the students come from wealthy, white families and generations of elite education. Autumn was only one of 3 students of color at the school. She was awarded a partial scholarship based on her excellent grades and an interview she had spent 2 months preparing for. Margaret looked straight at her daughter, unable to hide her confusion. Her voice trembled slightly as she said, "Your name is on the winter list, Autumn. They chose you to sing Ave Maria." The room fell silent. The sentence was like a stone dropped into a calm lake. Autumn never signed up, never chose a song, never filled out any forms. And she knew exactly who did it. Savannah Whitmore, daughter of Franklin Whitmore, one of the school's biggest donors. Savannah always smiles sweetly, but behind her icy blue eyes are cruel cuts that only those who have experienced them can feel. That girl can knock someone down with just a whisper, delivered at the right time, in the right place. Autumn was no innocent. Growing up on the streets of East Austin, she knew what it was like to be looked at with suspicion because of the color of her skin. But Westlake, the place she had dreamed of as the American dream of education and opportunity, showed her a different side, a place where the spotlight was only on those born with the right color shirt and the right name.
On that misty morning, the little girl walked through the black iron school gate, where a gilded slogan hung, "Excellence through tradition." Each word seemed to cast an invisible weight on Autumn's back. The second-floor hallway, where the music classroom was located, echoed with the sounds of laughter. Savannah stood in the middle of a group of her best friends, blonde girls, their uniforms tailored to their own fashions, giggling. As Autumn walked by, Savannah looked straight at her, a half-smile on her face. "Ave Maria, huh? I heard you picked that song to stand out?" The group laughed. None of them expected Autumn to respond. They were used to the silence, the hush, the acceptance. But Autumn didn't look away. For the first time, her eyes lifted, meeting Savannah's. No words, but there was something in those eyes that made Savannah confused for a split second. That day, Autumn went to see Miss Withers, her voice teacher and program coordinator. The middle-aged woman with silver hair tied up in a ponytail was preparing the lesson plan for the rehearsal. Autumn politely asked why her name was on the list. Miss Withers replied without looking up. "I signed up on Tuesday. Here's the form. It has my signature." The paper was placed on the table. There was a scribble, like her name, but not her handwriting. Autumn looked closely, her heart pounding. "This isn't my signature." "Do you have proof, Autumn?" Miss Withers' voice was even and emotionless. No, Autumn had no proof. She just had a feeling and a strong intuition that someone was trying to make a public fool of her. If you refuse to perform, we will be forced to reconsider your scholarship. You understand, right?
The words were soft but cold. Autumn walked out of the office with cold hands and a heavy heart. Once again, silence was expected from her. That evening, the wind picked up. Autumn sat in the basement of her small apartment, which her mother used as a storage room and study area. In the corner was an old, frayed cassette player that had belonged to her grandmother, Autumn Coleman, a jazz singer who stirred up small music bars in Houston in the 1960s. Autumn put the tape in, the tape crackled, and then her voice came through. Deep, warm, slightly hoarse, but full of soul. In that moment, she was no longer at Westlake, no longer a minority, no longer the target of ridicule, just a note unfulfilled. Her voice once said to her, "Your voice, Autumn, is where you can say what people don't want to hear and make them hear it with their hearts." She closed her eyes, repeating the refrain, and just then, a noise came from outside the basement door. Mr. Leonard Davis, the school's elderly janitor, was standing at the door, holding an old music book in his hand. "Did you know your grandmother used to sing this song gospel style in Houston?" Autumn was surprised. Mr. Davis walked in and put the book on the table. "I was your grandmother's accompanist, 1963, Jazz Fest, Houston. She wasn't afraid to sing after the national anthem. She sang like it was her last word." There was a pause. Autumn looked at him, for the first time feeling like someone had really seen her. "Do you want to sing, Autumn? Not to win a prize, to get your voice back." She nodded.
And the journey begins. A journey not just to perform, but to reclaiming voices stolen by forgery, discrimination, and silence for too long. From that night on, Autumn's small basement was no longer a place to store old things. It became a miniature stage where the voice buried in silence was gradually awakened. Leonard Davis didn't bring any textbooks or paperwork like the teachers at Westlake. Instead, he brought handwritten jazz sheet music from the 1960s, an old, dark brown notebook, and an acoustic guitar with peeling paint. "Music is not in the notes," he often said. "It is in the silences, where people dare not look." During the first week of practice, Autumn couldn't finish a single song. Every time she reached a climax, her throat would tighten. Not because she lacked skill, but because there was an invisible wall blocking her way. Mr. Davis didn't rush. He just strummed the strings, telling stories about the time he performed with Eloise, Autumn's grandmother. "Do you know how your grandmother was forced to wear a white dress and a wig to look aesthetically correct?" he asked one night. "She refused. And that night she was fired. But she sang anyway, right in front of the hotel, with a microphone borrowed from a newsboy. The crowd stood still. People turned around because there was something real about that voice." Autumn was silent. She had never heard her mother talk about the event. Eloise was a quiet memory at home, only evoked by the static of the cassette player. Westlake continued to spin in preparation for the winter recital. In the main music room, Savannah Whitmore was treated like a princess. She had her own piano tutor, and she got to pick her song before the other students. And her song, nothing but a contemporary pop chamber arrangement. Savannah had never mentioned Autumn directly since that day in the hallway, but in every look, every glance over her shoulder, every small laugh with her close friends, something had remained constant. The certainty that Autumn didn't belong here.
On the other side, Autumn and Mr. Davis begin to discover a piece of music that Autumn Coleman herself wrote, one that isn't in any of the school's music books. The song is called Simply Unsilenced, simply not silent. The slow jazz arrangement opens with a long drawl, then drops into a soulful whisper of lyrics. It's not an easy song to sing. There's no theatrical crescendo, there's no applause, but it's fleshy, time-worn, grandmotherly, a pent-up whisper of a generation. Autumn began practicing each phrase. She sang through the static of old speakers, the hum of the basement heater, and the flashlight beam to save electricity. And in those imperfections, her voice gradually took on a soul. One evening, as Autumn was humming the chorus, the basement door swung open. Her mother, Margaret, stood there, silent. "Are you singing your mother's song?" she asked softly, her eyes filled with emotion. Autumn turned back, stopping her singing. Mr. Davis looked at Margaret and nodded slightly. Margaret walked down the steps. In her hand was an old photograph, Eloise standing on an outdoor stage, her hair down, holding a microphone, with the nameplate Jacksonville Jazz Night, 1966, on the back. "That song," Margaret said, "was written the year she was almost refused a performance because she was pregnant with her mother. They said she was no longer sexy. But she sang it anyway, and that was her final statement." Autumn took the photo. Her grandmother's eyes in the photo seemed to stare back at her through the years, a challenging and hopeful gaze. From that day on, Autumn practiced singing with her past, her present, and something she couldn't name yet. Mr. Davis didn't teach like a teacher. He taught by suggestion. Don't sing as if you're asking permission. Sing as if you're telling a story people don't want to tell. And Autumn understood. Ave Maria, the song she had been forced to sing, was now her instrument. She didn't refuse to sing it, but she would do it her way.
At school, there's quiet turmoil. Savannah hears that Autumn is working on a remix for the performance. She's not happy. During the showcase organizing committee meeting, Savannah sweetly suggested to Principal Garland, "Sir, I think Autumn's performance should be placed last to highlight the program." The principal agreed without question. The scholarship girl was supposed to be a backup behind the choir. Autumn didn't object, but it only spurred her on. Late one afternoon, Autumn and Mr. Davis went to Harmony Books, which used to be a small music lounge in the 70s. There they met someone special, Jasmine Lee, Westlake alumnus, now a music producer in Dallas, and an honorary judge on this year's show. Jasmine, upon learning that Autumn is Eloise's niece, cannot hide her emotion. "She saved me from giving up on my dream once," she said. "She taught me they can take away your stage, but they can't take away your voice if you don't give it away." Jasmine agreed to help remix Simply Unsilenced, a live acoustic version with a highlight being a solo without background music in the middle of the song. A few days before the show, Autumn received an anonymous letter left in her locker. "If you want a scholarship, you better not stand out. Ave Maria only. No ideas." No signature, but the handwriting is clearly Savannah's group. Autumn didn't cry, she didn't report, she didn't scream, she just folded the paper, put it in her backpack, and walked into the music room. The singing rang out, clearer and brighter than ever before. The day of the performance approached. Autumn's mother took a day off from work to mend the old blue dress she wore to graduation. Mr. Davis cleaned the old guitar. Jasmine called the organizers to make sure they had special lighting for Autumn. And in a small room that used to be a storage room at Westlake High School, Autumn sang one last time before the show. No microphone, no accompaniment. "I am not what you hoped I'd be, but I am still who I am meant to be. Simply, unsilenced." The voice rang out like a prayer, not high, not ostentatious, but powerful enough to make the whole space seem to freeze. Outside, those who had once seen her as a shadow began to hear something coming, one thing that cannot be stopped. A voice. No more silence. The winter concert at Westlake Preparatory is more than just a concert. It's a social event, a ritual,
A show of fame, cleverly packaged in spotlights and predictable applause. From 5 p.m., luxury cars began to pour into the parking lot. Cadillacs, Lexuses, Mercedes lined up under the control of security guards wearing uniforms like in a TV series. In the main lobby, each reception desk was covered with red velvet, champagne was poured, and the parents' committee prepared shiny name tags.
Amidst a space filled with fresh flowers and white lights, Autumn Coleman, wearing a green dress patched from her mother's graduation dress, entered through the side door, accompanied by her mother and Mr. Leonard Davis. She didn't stand out. No one noticed, and that was part of the plan. Backstage, the air was brisk. The acts were numbered. Each student had a name tag, a microphone, and a clear runtime. Autumn was placed last, closing solo, right after a chorus of 15 seniors. This was, according to the official wording of the event, a gentle and connecting end. But Autumn knew the real reason. They wanted everyone to leave before she did. And then, the first thing happened. As Autumn entered the ticket area to pick up her mother, a ticket inspector stopped Margaret. "Sorry, you are not on the priority parent list." Her voice was steady, her eyes unwavering. Autumn's mother held out the invitations, the kind of tickets that were clearly advertised as being for parents of performing students, but the staff member just shrugged. "I don't know anything. This list was passed down from the principal. I hope you understand." Autumn was about to speak when a hand gently grabbed her shoulder. It was Mr. Davis. His voice was a whisper. "Don't let them get you off track. I'll bring your mother in through the technical route." And sure enough, the three of them slipped through the backstage corridor, the route for technicians and backstage staff. Autumn's mother, still calm, looked at her daughter, nodding slightly. "Don't let anyone decide who gets the spotlight. You are your own light, Autumn."
Backstage, the show began. Savannah Whitmore was the fifth act, a pop number with a live band. She appeared in a Swarovski-embellished gown, singing Rise Above like the Broadway stage belonged to her. The applause was long, not because she sang so well, but because they had been cued to clap. In the front row, Franklin Whitmore smiled with satisfaction, shaking hands with the other parents as if his daughter had just won a Grammy. No one mentioned Autumn. No one asked about closing solo. Meanwhile, backstage, Autumn opened the personal microphone she had been assigned. Her heart sank, because the mic inside was not the one she had requested. This one, old, noisy, and prone to losing signal. Mr. Davis frowned. He quietly checked the transmitter and found that the channel was shared with another microphone, which meant that if Autumn used it, the sound could be drowned out by another microphone on stage. A subtle way to ruin the show. Jasmine Lee, honorary judge, then walked in from the sidelines. She was looking for Autumn to wish her luck before the show.
After hearing the story, she immediately called the sound department. "If Autumn's mic is malfunctioning, there will be an article in the Austin Chronicle tomorrow with the sound guy's name." Within 10 minutes, a high-end wireless microphone arrived, but time was running out. 9 p.m. The last choir performance had just ended. The conductor came out to thank the audience, then said, "And before we wrap up a wonderful night, here's a surprise performance from 8th grader Autumn Coleman." There was a smattering of applause. A few people flipped through the program. Her name was nowhere to be seen, because Autumn had been crossed off the list printed on the flyer. A group of people began to rise from their seats. A few parents chatted quietly, not noticing the person walking out from the left wing. But then, when Autumn appeared, under the soft amber light, and the first note rang out, the whole auditorium suddenly fell silent. No background music, no piano, no harmony. Autumn begins with a cappella. A lonely voice echoed through the room full of people.
"I am not your shining glass. I am the cracks you tried to hide, but I reflect just fine." The lyrics are the original, simply unsilenced. Each line feels like it was carved from the heart. There's something about the way she pronounces each word that makes you stop. Mr. Whitmore stopped talking. Savannah stood backstage, stunned, and Principal Garland, who had not expected this to happen, leaned back in his chair, his face white. Autumn continued, the lights now dimmed to a warm yellow, as per Jasmine's suggestion, to give the impression of a small gig in a 1960s jazz club. In the middle of the song, a gentle guitar sound began. Mr. Davis stepped out from the wings, sat down on a wooden chair, and played simple but precise notes. The scene, an old janitor playing a guitar to a little black girl singing a song written by her deceased grandmother, froze the air. Then, at the final chorus, Autumn looked up and closed her eyes. "I do not scream to be heard. I just refuse to disappear." The long sound seemed to tear through all the plots, all the suspicious looks, all the deliberate silence. When the song ended, no one applauded immediately, because everyone was stunned.
Then a small round of applause came from the third row, an older woman who had been Eloise's co-star. Then a second, then a third, and then the whole hall stood up. Not because Autumn was a good student, not because she sang well, but because they knew she dared to speak up in a place that once tried to silence her. Principal Garland walked onto the stage smiling wryly. He tried to end the program with thanks for an inspiring performance. Savannah left halfway. Mr. Whitmore did not shake hands again that night. But Autumn's mother, sitting in the back row, was crying, quietly. Not because my daughter got applause, but because the little girl finally say what 3 generations of women in the family have always wanted to say. The next morning, Austin was gray, clouds rolling low like a damp blanket over the city. But inside Autumn Coleman, something was lit. She woke up earlier than usual. On the small desk was an old cassette tape, the one recorded last night, copied by Mr. Davis on his old equipment. Her voice came through the speakers, simple, honest, but strong like the wind against glass. Her mother, Margaret, stood by the stove making coffee, her eyes never leaving the local newspaper, Austin Daily Voice. On page 5, a small article is nestled between the stock market news and the weather report. 8th graders surprise Westlake winter concert with original song with classic jazz inspiration. No photos, no quotes, no author name. But that's the beginning. At Westlake School, what happened last night quickly spread through text messages, the intranet, and cell phone videos of a few parents who stayed until the end of the program. Who is that girl? Why is my name not on the list? What song is that? Not pop? Autumn became a name whispered in the hallways, not with disdain, but with curiosity. But that didn't last long. Principal Stephen Garland, who had initially viewed the performance as an unfortunate accident, acted quickly. At a staff meeting Monday morning, he stressed, "We need to make sure that future performances are in line with the academic and standards of Westlake. Personal feelings should not override the system." It was his way of saying, "This time, yes. Next time, no." Autumn was called into the office at noon. Inside, Principal Garland sat with Miss Withers, the music teacher, and Mrs. Murphy from the scholarship committee. No one laughed. No congratulations. "Autumn, your performance was very touching," the principal began. "But it caused some misunderstandings. Some parents thought you were given unfair advantage by appearing without being on the official list." The girl sat still, her hands clasped together.
"We need you to sign a statement that the song is an extension of the musical program and does not reflect any political or social views." Margaret, Autumn's mother, told her daughter, "If they give you conditions for keeping your scholarship, listen carefully. Don't sign it yet. Call me." And Autumn did just that. The girl said softly, "I want a lawyer to look it over before I sign anything." Principal Garland raised his eyebrows, leaning back slightly. "Autumn, this is just an internal document." But he didn't expect Autumn to respond in a voice calmer than an adult. "So why does it take 3 adults to get a 13-year-old student to sign?" No one responded. Autumn stood up, bowed, then walked out, leaving a silent room behind. That same evening, Jasmine Lee arrived at Autumn's house. She brought a memory stick containing a professionally edited, lit, and recorded video of her performance. "I moved the whole hall with my voice, but if they control the recording, they will distort what I really said." Jasmine suggested posting the video online, but not through the school's official account. She had a content manager at a major arts channel in Dallas. They could post the video with a true description, that it was an original song written by Autumn Coleman, a pioneering black singer, performed by her granddaughter Autumn at Westlake. Autumn looked at her mother. Margaret nodded. "If it's your voice, then you should keep the decision."
Within 48 hours of the video being posted, it had more than 400,000 views. By the third day, it had surpassed 1 million. Local news sites began to carry stories. The name Autumn Coleman appeared next to the phrase, "rising voice of justice." Some former Westlake students left comments. "I studied here. I know how silent they are in the face of injustice. Eloise performed at my school in 1971. Autumn's voice brought tears to my eyes just like that day." But not everyone is satisfied. Savannah Whitmore and her father, Franklin, called an emergency parent-teacher conference, citing the school's academic values and artistic traditions. At the meeting, Franklin said, "Just because someone comes with a self-composed song doesn't give them the right to disrupt the structure of a carefully prepared program." He didn't mention Autumn by name, but everyone knew he was talking about her. Another parent, the mother of a classmate named Sophie, stood up to object. "What are we teaching our children? That creativity is a threat, or that the truth is only allowed to be told when the rich allow it?" The whole hall fell silent.
Meanwhile, at Autumn's house, the phone kept ringing. TV stations were calling. A documentary studio was offering to do a short story about her story. Autumn refused most of it. She didn't like the camera. She just wanted to sing. But Jasmine understood. She said to Margaret, "If we don't tell this story the right way, someone else will tell it their way, and they will erase the reason why Autumn sang that night." Margaret pondered. Then she picked up the phone and called an old friend, a former civil rights attorney in Houston, for advice. At school, Autumn clearly noticed the change. Some teachers were more reserved. A few former classmates who had been silent around Savannah started talking. Someone left a note in her locker, "You are not alone." But at the same time, she was withdrawn from the choir the following month, citing inadequate completion of the basic music program. She wasn't surprised, but Mr. Davis was angry. "We can't let them erase you from the program, like they did to your grandmother." Jasmine suggested hosting a community concert, inviting local artists of color, public school students, and former students who had been excluded from the Westlake system.
Autumn agrees. Echoes of the Unheard. The name was chosen after a long night of debate, notes, and a call to the past. Autumn Coleman did not name it. It was Jasmine Lee, with her experienced voice and worldly eyes, who spoke softly in the darkness. "We don't sing to stand out. We sing for people who have never heard us." Autumn said nothing. She just nodded. The nod was reminiscent of her grandmother, Eloise Coleman,
who sang on the sidewalks of Houston when she was banned from performing in auditoriums because she didn't fit the white auditorium's taste. The new show is scheduled for the first Friday in March at the East Austin Community Cultural Center, a small, intimate theater that seats about 200 people and was once home to black music concerts from the 1960s to 1980s, but has since fallen into disuse as the arts have shifted downtown. Jasmine rented the stage for a nominal fee. She called in the performers: saxophones, a jazz trio, a gospel group, a poet who had been banned from the school stage because his voice was too divisive. Autumn isn't the main act, but she is the reason, and that's enough to make everything revolve around her like the center of a big circle. While preparing, Mr. Leonard Davis handed Autumn a small wooden box. Old, reddish-brown, shiny brass lock. "I've had this since 1967, he said. "My grandmother said, 'The day my daughter sings, give her this.'" Autumn opened it. Inside was an amber hairpin. A large, teardrop-shaped piece of amber, orange as the setting sun, was set in a hand-carved silver frame. Under the cushion was a note.
For the one who dares to sing without permission. Autumn held the hairpin, as if holding a blessing from far away. Meanwhile, across town, in Principal Garland's office, things were not so peaceful. A long article was published on the front page. Austin Watchlight revealed that the performances at the winter show were adjusted without following the registration list. Some students of color were forced to change their performances or were eliminated from the program. Student Autumn Coleman was denied the right to perform, then temporarily accepted to perform at the end of the program as a backup act. The article indirectly interviewed an unnamed technical staff member, a retired teacher, and Mr. Davis. Garland was furious. He called an emergency meeting and declared, "If students, alumni, and even former staff come back to sue the school, we will lose funding." The only person who didn't speak at that meeting was Miss Withers. After the show, her eyes toward Autumn weren't the same.
The East Austin rehearsal was on Wednesday afternoon. Autumn sang a sample of the song, Simply Unsilenced, the first time there was a full jazz band playing the background. When the song ended, the drums beat softly, the bass hummed steadily, and all was silent, as if swallowing the moment. An old artist in the band whispered, "This is the song of a forgotten generation." Autumn bowed her head, her eyes slightly red, but she didn't cry. She had long since passed the point of crying. While waiting for the show, Autumn accidentally discovered a notebook of her grandmother's, tucked inside an old book, The Souls of Black Folk, by W.E.B. Du Bois. Notebook notes, "Jazz is where I tell my story that people don't dare write in books." Another episode tells of Eloise performing at a high school, where she was forced to change the original lyrics to ones appropriate for an educational environment. Eloise refused and was banned from performing. "I don't sing to please people. I sing to stay human."
Autumn closed the book. In that moment, she knew. The upcoming show wasn't just about her, it was a continuation. Friday night. The sky turned cold and the wind whipped through the dry oak trees. The East Austin Cultural Center lit up for the first time in years. There was a line of people waiting outside, people of all colors, ages, and dress styles. Some wore suits, some wore slippers. There were old ladies holding folding chairs. There were little girls with braids like Autumn's. On the banner in front of the gate, the large words, "Echoes of the Unheard." Autumn sat in the backstage room. Next to her was her mother, Margaret, holding her hand. You are going further than your mother and grandmother ever dared to dream. The girl did not reply. She just took the amber hairpin and pinned it to her lightly braided hair. A knock at the door. Mr. Davis handed over the microphone. Jasmine Lee followed, placing her hand on Autumn's shoulder. This stage belongs to you. No one has the right to take it back. The girl stood up. She took a breath. The lights went out. A voice came from the loudspeaker. Please welcome Autumn Coleman. There was no thunderous applause like at school plays. Everyone was quiet, concentrated. Autumn stepped out. No flowers, no rotating lights, just a 13-year-old black girl in a simple dress, her hair in an amber hairpin, standing in the soft light. She started singing. The air froze. The voice didn't echo the emotion of the school performance. It was deeper, more intense. Part grandmother, part mother, part someone who had never been on stage. You cannot silence what was born in fire. My voice is forged in what you call desire, not for fame but to exist, simply unsilenced. The audience stood up, not in a loud applause, but as if in respect. Many cried. An old woman clutched her chest. An old white man whispered, "This song is for me, for what I didn't dare do." That night, the song was played thousands of times. Someone brought a loudspeaker to play in front of Westlake High School. Some students wore shirts with the lyrics. Some painted amber pins on street walls with the words, "Never again silenced." An echo has arisen. The call came on a mid-March morning, just as the winds were changing in Austin. Margaret was folding winter sweaters into storage bins when the phone rang. The voice on the other end was female, firm but polite. "Hello, this is Rosa Mendoza, secretary from the Office of the Texas State Board of Education. We would like to invite Miss Autumn Coleman to speak at the special hearing on racism and cultural expression in the education system." Margaret held the phone tightly. She is only 13 years old. We know, but what she says and sings is being heard by the whole state.
Autumn wasn't surprised by the news. She'd seen Ruby Bridges' speeches as a child and memorized Maya Angelou's lines. But knowing she'd be speaking in front of more than 24 people, politicians, school superintendents, inspectors, legal professionals, still made her heart sink. Mr. Davis looked at her and smiled softly. "You are not the first child to speak up, but you are one of the few who dare to speak up just when people were trying to put it out." At the same time, Principal Garland acted, not just one way, but several ways at once. First, he sent a letter requesting a review of Autumn's academic and extracurricular records, citing numerous extracurricular activities that were not directly supervised by the school. Next, Autumn's scholarship, which was funded by a private foundation affiliated with donors like the Whitmore family, was temporarily suspended pending review. And finally, Autumn was withdrawn from representing her school in the Dallas Area Interscholastic Art Conference. She knows what they are doing. This is no longer a schoolyard game. This is how the system punishes an uncontrolled voice.
Jasmine Lee and civil rights attorney Sharon Evers immediately held a press conference, releasing documents showing that Westlake had a 17-year history of not having a black student win a state solo instrument award, despite having students participate. They posted a video recording of the rehearsals, proving that Autumn had her mic cut off and was removed from the performance list. Public opinion exploded. An online petition with more than 70,000 signatures calls for the Texas Department of Education to investigate Westlake School. A former teacher, Mr. Joel Simmons, spoke up. "I was demoted for having black students perform the blues. I saw what was happening as a repetition of a kind of systemic silencing." Autumn's hearing date. The State Board of Education headquarters, a stately red brick building in downtown Austin, was ablaze.
Since 7 a.m., there were dozens of people standing outside, carrying signs. Let her speak. Education must hear all voices. Silence is not neutral. Autumn wore a white shirt and navy blue skirt, accompanied by her mother, Jasmine, and attorney Evers. She walked into the conference room with a spine as straight as if forged by generations of women who had been silent for too long. The moderator invited her up to the podium. No lapel microphone, no background music, no flowery introduction. Invite Autumn Coleman, 8th grader from Austin, to speak about her experience in education and cultural freedom. She took a breath. The whole room was silent. Then, Autumn began to speak. Her voice was not loud, but clear, like a bell ringing on a quiet Texas morning. When I sang at Westlake, I didn't think I was doing anything terrible. I was just singing my grandmother's song, a black woman who was rejected because she didn't fit the white aesthetic. I sang because I didn't want her history, my mother's and my history, to continue to be edited to make it look safe for others.
I don't apologize for not singing the way people expected me to. And I don't think a student should have their scholarship threatened for sharing their true identity. If your school sees your music as a threat, then maybe it's not the songs that are the problem, but the system they want to maintain. She stopped. The council did not move. After a few seconds, an elderly woman, a longtime commissioner, placed her hand over her heart. "Thank you, Autumn." She had no more words. The news spread throughout the day. Television stations aired Autumn's short speech. The media calls her Texas Awakening Song. A Houston radio station devoted an evening hour to replaying jazz recordings by Autumn Coleman, whom they had taken off the air in 1974. The next day, Westlake School received a request letter. Suspend all forms of scholarship adjustments for students of color until the official investigation results are announced. Principal Garland was forced to answer the press, but he dodged, "We believe in neutrality and the rule of law in education. We will work together to verify everything." He doesn't smile like before anymore. And in subsequent meetings, he no longer mentioned Autumn's name. Because right now, Autumn was a louder voice than he was. That afternoon, when Autumn got home, she received a package from New Orleans. Inside was a black and white photo, a younger Eloise Pullman standing on stage, looking toward the camera. Attached is the handwritten text. "She used to sing and not be heard. Now you sing and the whole state is listening." When a 13-year-old girl does something that adults spend their entire lives afraid to do, the system reacts in two ways: either pretend not to know or start shaking. With Westlake, both of those reactions happened simultaneously. Principal Garland stopped holding press conferences. He withdrew from parent groups and declined interviews. A week after the hearing, he abruptly took a leave of absence for health reasons. Internally, the whispers were that he was being asked to quietly step down to preserve the district's image. The Whitmore family, especially Savannah, did not choose silence. Savannah posted a 12-minute video on social media, which begins with the sentence, "I'm not a racist. I just don't like to see people who don't know the rules ruining the team's efforts." In the video, she mocks Autumn as a divisive person, implying that she is being groomed by the media and overdoing things to get famous. Thousands of comments poured in from the comment section. Some defended Savannah, but most were critical. What really divides is that you are chosen despite your lack of talent. You have nothing to lose, Savannah. That girl is paying for something you never had to endure. Singing is not to win, it is to be heard. A few days later, Savannah deactivated her account. But her family was not silent.
Mr. Whittemore's attorney filed a formal complaint with the Board of Education, asking them to reinvestigate the fairness of Autumn's appearance at the hearing. Of course, the petition was rejected, but it also shows that those who used to be in power had lost control. Meanwhile, Autumn started receiving invitations from all over. A university in New York invited her to attend the Voice of the Future conference. An Atlanta arts organization wants Autumn to perform at a gala honoring influential women of color. An independent record label suggested producing a jazz EP based on the song Simply Unsilenced.
Jasmine, who used to work in the media industry, said bluntly, "You have to decide, do you want to be an icon or do you want to be yourself? Because sometimes people will choose you to use your name as a slogan and then control the story in their own way." Autumn didn't answer right away, but that night she sat in the basement opening Eloise's old notebook. A note left her speechless. When singing is used for glory and not for living, it becomes an ornament. The next morning, Autumn turns down the offer from the record label. She tells Jasmine, "I don't want my voice to be chopped up, turned into a beat, and sold as an icon." Jasmine just smiled. She understood. Autumn, however, agrees to attend the workshop in New York, not to perform, but to listen to others. She began to understand. Her voice was not a loudspeaker to speak all the time, but a presence. Choose to appear in the right place at the right time. At Westlake, Autumn's class got a new teacher. Miss Withers, after much internal pressure, asked for a transfer to a liberal arts school. The replacement was an unexpected person, Mr. Leonard Davis.
After years of working as a janitor and informal music instructor, he was invited to become a part-time teacher, teaching community music and jazz history. An elective class, but 38 students quickly signed up. Many people who thought Autumn was different now asked to join to understand her better. In the first lesson, Mr. Davis said, "We didn't come here to learn how to play music. We came here to learn why people used to be so afraid of music." In a free writing exercise, Autumn shares, "Silence is not just not speaking. Silence is when people make you afraid to speak, to sing, to tell the story properly." It was that article that got her invited to speak at the graduation ceremony, something unprecedented in school history, for 8th graders. Autumn's mother heard the news and only said one sentence. "There were times when I was asked to speak, not because I won, but because people couldn't ignore me anymore." The night before graduation, Autumn sat in the basement playing old cassette tapes. Her song, Simply Unsilenced, is available in many versions online now, but Autumn chose to listen to the first version, scratchy, off-key, with the sound of wind coming through the cracks in the door.
She closed her eyes and hear her voice clearly, not in the words, but in the silence between two verses. A voice no longer under control. A memory comes alive. Graduation day at Westlake came in the mild May sun. Wildflowers covered the grounds. SUVs lined the parking lot as they did every year, but the atmosphere inside was different. For the first time in the school's history, an 8th grader, not a senior, was asked to speak at the commencement ceremony. Her name, for months, had been heard far beyond the boundaries of the private school, Autumn Coleman. She was once eliminated from the performance list. The girl once blocked her mother from entering the auditorium. The girl had her mic changed, her order changed, and even her right to stand on stage changed. Now given the main microphone, among thousands of students, parents, teachers, and guests of honor. Autumn sat in the front row, among the students in their navy blue graduation gowns. In her hair, she wore Eloise's amber brooch again, shinier this time, as if daring to step into the light on her own. Behind her sat Savannah Whitmore, still sitting, still perfectly made up, but with a different look in her eyes than she had at the beginning of the year. No longer contemptuous, more wary. On the stand, Mr. Davis sat in the guests' row, next to Jasmine Lee and attorney Sharon Evers. In the fourth row, near the left corner, there was a strange woman, black cloak, wide-brimmed hat, holding a shiny wooden cane. No one knew who she was, but Margaret did. She took Autumn's hand. That person used to sing with my mother. When Autumn's name was called, the entire schoolyard held its breath, not because they were waiting for her to say anything special, but because they can't guess what she will say. Autumn stepped up to the podium, set the paper down, but didn't open it. She looked at the crowd. Her voice was loud and clear. Someone told me, the last words are what people remember the most. So I want to say the last words of a school year, a generation, and a kind of silence that has existed for too long. She stopped. Not a sound. I learned a lot at this school, but the most important thing was not in the curriculum. I learned that when you are different, you have to work twice as hard, not to get ahead, but just to be treated fairly. I learned that if I sing differently from the rest, people will say I'm breaking the rules, even though I've never heard of them. But I also learned that a well-timed song, an unwavering voice, can change the way others listen.
She bowed her head. The applause did not break out immediately. It came in spades, in rows, from people who understood. They had just heard it, truth. No need to emphasize. After the ceremony in a small waiting room behind the stage, Autumn was led by a man to meet a strange woman. She wore gold-rimmed glasses, a pearl necklace, and still held an old wooden cane in her hand. "Are you Autumn?" she asked. "Yes." "She is Gladys Monroe. She sang with Eloise Coleman in 1969 at an old church in Houston. My grandmother was the one who taught her to sing right from the bone, not the throat." Autumn's eyes widened. Her mother sat beside her, holding her daughter's hand tightly. Mrs. Gladys took out of her bag an old roll of paper tied with red string. "Before your grandmother died, she sent this to me. She said, if my granddaughter sings, really sings, give this to her, but only when she no longer sings to be invited, but sings so that others will no longer be silenced." Autumn opens the scroll. It is the original song, Simply Unsilenced, with sentences that have never been published. At the bottom, there is a handwritten sentence,
This song is unfinished, because the silence it answers still lives. That evening, Autumn and her mother sat on the porch. Outside, the cicadas began to chirp. In Autumn's hand was the sheet music that Gladys had given her. She read each line, then softly sang a verse she had never sung before. "I did not come to fix your ears, but to remind your heart, it still has rhythm." Her mother burst into tears, not because of the notes, but because she knew this was the moment, a generational song. The next morning, Autumn recorded the full version of Simply Unsilenced. No studio, no digital, just her acoustic guitar, and Mr. Davis's cassette player. She sent the record to an address, Texas Southern School of Music, with a small piece of paper. "For next year's class, if anyone ever thinks they shouldn't sing, give them this." No signature. Summer in Austin comes with dry winds and sun so white it blurs the roofs. But inside the Coleman family's small apartment, the air is cool and thoughtful.
Since graduation, Autumn has barely left her upstairs room. She has refused interviews. She has refused show invitations. She has accepted no personal scholarships. She has not signed any contracts. I need to listen to my own voice because I'm afraid it's being used by other people to say things I never meant, she told Mr. Davis.
Every day, Autumn reads handwritten letters from all over: a retired teacher from Chicago, an ex-convict from Louisiana, a single mother in Kansas City, even an anonymous musician in Canada. They all wrote one thing: "You remind me why I used to sing." A special letter, handwritten in pale blue ink, came from Maya Whitmore, Savannah's grandmother. "Autumn, I used to close my door when your mother was a child. I used to think that voices like yours would pass away like the night wind. Now I know. It was the wind that kept my mind awake through the years of silence. I don't apologize for my granddaughter, but I want to thank you for singing to people the rest of my family doesn't want to hear." Autumn folded the letter and placed it next to the nightlight. In mid-June, a courier letter arrived from Berklee College of Music, Boston. In the letter, the Academy invited Autumn to attend a special 3-week summer camp, open to only 12 students from across the United States, with the theme, "The Art of Protest Through Music." The Art of Protest Through Music. Berklee covered all the expenses, but there were no specific songs she had to perform, no celebrity strings attached, no filming, no PR. Margaret put the letter down and looked at her daughter. "I don't need to be more famous, but I have the right to learn, to better understand who you are singing to and for what."
Autumn agrees. 3 weeks in Boston became a new chapter in my life. No stage, no audience, just listen. I learned about Billie Holiday and the band version of Strange Fruit, about Nina Simone and why she said, "You can't help it. An artist's duty is to reflect the times in which we live." Autumn doesn't just learn to sing jazz. She learns history behind each song. Who wrote it? Why did it get written? And why are some songs never played on the radio, even though everyone knows the lyrics are right? During a final practice session, a professor asked Autumn, "If you had only one last song to sing before you lost your voice, what would it be?" Autumn did not hesitate. "The song that my grandmother never got to sing in full." Then she began to sing the last part of the song, simply unsilenced, the part that Mrs. Gladys Monroe once gave. The whole class stood up after the last sentence. "I do not beg for air. I become the breath."
After the course, Autumn returned to Austin. No station knew she had been there. No newspaper followed her. And that made her feel better than ever. However, in early July, an unexpected event occurred. The Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C., announced that it will hold 100th anniversary of poet Langston Hughes' death, with the theme, "When Words Sing, the Legacy of Black Voice in American Art." The list of speakers and artists includes Michelle Obama, John Batiste, Audra McDonald, and Autumn Coleman. She didn't know who nominated her, but the invitation was clear. No need to perform. We want you to recite your grandmother's lyrics as a legacy affirmation. The whole family was silent. No one pressed. Jasmine said softly, "This time, no one asked me to sing. They just wanted to listen to me."
Autumn nodded. The day of the ceremony, Washington was drenched in sunshine. The museum's dome was a bronze spire reflecting history, and each voice pressed down and rose like a jazz drum. Autumn wore an earth-toned dress, her hair braided with an amber brooch. She held the original handwritten copy of Simply Unsilenced,
no singing, but read the lyrics. This is not a hymn for heaven. This is a song for survival. My voice will not be sweet, just true, and that is enough. The audience stood up, not applauding, but being quiet. To hear, to keep, to not forget. Autumn stepped off the stage. An older man approached. I was in a protest in 1963. I got beaten up for playing Billie Holiday on the radio. Thanks for that. Don't let the song end too soon. That evening, Autumn sat in the hotel room, the lights off. She looked out the window, where the street lights stretched out like sparse musical notes. Her mother walked in, putting her hand on her shoulder.
Your voice doesn't belong on stage. It doesn't belong on contract. It doesn't belong to anyone. Your voice just needs to belong to you. And Autumn smiled. First time since that winter show. Fall returns to Austin, as soft as a sigh through the oak trees. The wind is less harsh. The light is as soft as the color of earth after rain. Westlake Preparatory School opens its doors for a new school year. For most students, it's probably just another cycle. New books, new friends, new teachers. But for Autumn Coleman, this year is different. Not because she's famous, not because people know her name, but because this is her first time walked into a school that once refused to hear her sing and knew they couldn't do that anymore. On the first day of school, she wore a simple white shirt, a knee-length blue skirt, no makeup, no flowers, no welcoming banner. But every step she took in the hallway made the students on both sides of the aisle move slightly aside, not out of fear, but out of respect.
Right outside the music classroom, Savannah Whitmore was handing out flyers for a new club, Westlake Music Collective. Seeing Autumn, the blonde girl pursed her lips, intending to turn away, then hesitated. I have a copy of your lyrics. My mom printed them out at the Library of Congress. Autumn nodded slightly, neither smiling nor sad. My voice, no need to apologize, but if you want to use it correctly, listen from the beginning. Savannah paused. Then she nodded. They walked into the classroom without another word. Mr. Leonard Davis is no longer a full-time teacher. After the summer, he is retiring. The reason stated in the application is, I have passed on what needed to be passed on. Now it is the next generation's turn. The last day he stood in class, he gave Autumn a small wooden box, exactly like the one he had given her the year before. But this time, inside is an old cassette tape and a roll of paper tucked deep under the liner. I wasn't sure she was ready to hear this last year, but this year, it might be time. That evening, Autumn sat alone in the basement. She turned on a cassette tape. A buzzing sound came first.
Then, a familiar voice, deep, slightly hoarse, gentle, rang out. If you're listening to this tape, you're probably singing. You're probably standing where I've never stood. And if you sing not to win, but to live truthfully, then I believe you have understood what a whole generation of us dare not say. Voice of Eloise Coleman, recorded in 1982. They are not afraid of music. They are afraid of the meaning of music when it no longer serves them, when it reminds them of something they want to forget. The black voice does not need permission. It needs to be preserved, repeated, protected, with your life. Autumn turned on the small light. She took the roll of paper out of the box. It was a handwritten letter, her handwriting, written in faded purple ink. Dear August, if you choose to sing, remember, no song is harmless. Every word you breathe will touch someone. Wake them up, make them cry, make them angry, remind them of what they have buried. People will want you to change, make you softer,
wider, popular. But if you keep the first sound you make, like the cry you made when you were born, then I believe you will never be extinguished. Autumn folded the letter and placed it next to the tape player. Outside, the sound of autumn cicadas rang out sparsely. On the wall, the light cast a small shadow, the image of a girl with braided hair holding a music book. In October, Autumn was invited to participate in a community music festival in Houston, where her grandmother was once banned from singing. This time, she did not perform Simply Unsilenced. She sang a new song, which she wrote herself. Song name, We Don't Whisper Anymore. The first sentence is, "They tried to teach us to hum softly, but we remembered how to roar." When the song ended, no one stood up, no one applauded immediately, just a very long moment of silence. A silence not of oppression, but of finally people were heard. And Autumn, 14 years old, standing in the middle of that stage, knew one thing. I'm not just a singer. I am the one who keeps memories in sound, and I will leave an echo behind, so that whoever comes forward will not have to start in silence. Autumn's journey wasn't just a story. It was a reflection of something deeper in all of us. After watching her stand up, sing out, and refuse to be silenced, how did you feel? Did it remind you of a time when your voice was ignored? Or maybe a moment you found the courage to finally speak up?
What lessons stayed with you most? That silence can be just as loud as injustice? That one voice, especially a young black girl's voice, can shift an entire system? We want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell us what part moved you most. Let's make this more than just a video. Let's make it a conversation. If this story touched your heart or opened your eyes, please like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We're telling more stories like Autumn's, stories of resilience, truth, and quiet courage, and we want you to be part of this community, because voices like hers deserve to echo.